The Sony Shills are in full damage control mode, or rather, pretending The Last of Us Part 2 is a huge success mode. Check out this tweet. This isn't the first example of this I've seen. This isn't the only person I've seen with this take. There's been a couple of people doing this. The Last of Us Part 2 is the UK's fastest selling Sony game on PS4, bigger than the Uncharted 4 launch in box sales alone. It's the biggest game launch this year by far, smashing the opening sales of Animal Crossing and comfortably bigger than its predecessor. No, bigger than Animal Crossing. They're seriously going to do this. They're seriously going to try and present The Last of Us Part 2 as being more successful than Animal Crossing, one of the most popular games of the year, the best-selling game so far this year. A game that was a huge success on Switch, has sold like 17 million units last I checked. It's gonna crack like 20 million units by the end of the year, if not 25. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal. You know what I mean? Animal Crossing is a big deal. And yet these motherfuckers, the Benji Sales, the Christopher Drings, Daniel Ahmed, yeah. That's Zoig X, isn't it? The pedophile, the pedophile from Reset Era? Yeah, all of these people are coming out trying desperately to try and control the narrative in order to try and you filthy bigots. Oh, The Last of Us Part 2, it's so successful. They're still trying to damage control. They're still trying to do these things, and there have been a couple of other signs that this has been happening. That Sony is instigating some of this. The user Metacritic score for The Last of Us Part 2 has been going up. There have been a handful of a single review accounts popping up out of nowhere to give the game a perfect score to mitigate the backlash from the start in order to prop the game's user scores up. It's ridiculous. It really is. People are talking a lot about the paid reviews, the 10 out of 10 scores, as you should. I'm not saying that that isn't an issue. That's actually a big issue in and of itself. But also, I'm not sure if anyone is bringing this up. Anyone else other than me is bringing this up. The sales numbers, they're completely fake. These analysts, these people, they do the exact same thing. They exist to talk up Sony in business terms. The critics exist to talk up Sony in critic terms, to try and sell you on these games and try and pretend that these games are must plays, 10 out of 10 experiences, the best games ever made. The Last of Us Part 2, that was thrown around a lot before release. You have all these people giving the game perfect scores, right? But now you have the next wave of people, the next wave of propaganda. You have the sales people. You have these people coming out and saying the game is a massive success, no matter how big of a failure it was. I keep bringing this up. I hate to sound like a broken record, but they really do keep doing this. It feels like every time a new PlayStation game comes out, it immediately shatters all records. Every single time, it's sold more than the last game. It's sold more in the UK. It's done all this stuff. They keep spinning the narrative, right? And making all these comparisons that simply aren't indicative of reality. Nobody, The Last of Us is not going to outsell Animal Crossing. It just isn't. It's not going to happen. It's too controversial. It doesn't have the widespread appeal. It doesn't have. It's not on Switch. It's not going to happen. Sony's going to try and prop up these numbers by giving away the game and. On PSN and having flash sales and stuff like that, digitally and stuff like that. The thing they've always done, right? They're going to lie, cheat, steal, manipulate. they're going to do what they're doing now with like the reviews and the sales numbers. They're just going to keep fudging the numbers until suddenly we're way more popular than Nintendo, which is it keeps happening all the time. It really does, and it's getting really embarrassing, and I think really transparent because nobody in the actual gaming sphere is defending The Last of Us Part 2 right now. Like, it is entirely the gaming media and the people who made it, and maybe a handful of like hardcore Sony fanboys who are trying to get YouTube partnerships. Like, maybe those people are defending it as well. For the most part, though, like literally everyone I've seen, even people I greatly disrespect, like Angry Joe, like all of these Twitch streamers, right? Like everyone who isn't directly affiliated with Sony seems to hate this game, and for good reasons. It's not very good. It is legit a disaster, and I'm hoping this sort of puts people off supporting PS5. I hope this convinces people to not support PlayStation, because it's going to happen with every major PlayStation franchise. There's no getting around this. Like, God of War is going to become like this. That direction. Basically, The Last of Us Part 2 is what people assumed God of War 2018 was going to be when we first saw it. I mean, God of War 2018 was not good, but like we were expecting it to be like super soy filled and beta, and that didn't seem to have happened the way to the extent that it happened with The Last of Us Part 2. But yeah, I don't think. I mean, it just needs to be more common knowledge, I think. There are better games out there, like The Last of Us Part 2 is not a 10 out of 10 game. The gaming media can't be trusted, not just for the reviews, but for like the coverage of the sales, coverage of the game in question, the media around it, potential sequels. Like, don't refer to the game media at all. Like, if anything, I think there needs to be a demand from the gaming community. We need to stop giving these people credibility. Like, there needs to be some kind of website that's only user reviewed. Like, critic reviews are just purely irresponsible and unreliable, and you can't trust them. There's no getting around that. And three, what was I going to get at? You can't trust the gaming. I already talked about that, right? Man, there's so much to cover. I'm sure I'll be getting back to this, because this is all stuff I cover on like my website, blackcatbooks.org, and stuff like that. It's all stuff that I'm very, very passionate about. Like, we need to put an end to this corrupt media. We need to put an end to this ridiculous narrative. I'm sick of seeing these games propped up the way they are. Like, people are always wondering why I'm always so hard on like Sony in particular, and why I hate them so much. It's because of stuff like this. Like, honestly, it's really interesting to me. I knew this was going to happen eventually when it came to like the PlayStation IP. Like, I was way less surprised than most people when they came out with The Last of Us Part 2 and were like, okay, Ellie is a lesbian now. Okay, Joel isn't really in the game. Yeah, you play as Ellie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I saw all of that coming, and I knew where it was heading, since like 2014 or something, right? Because I was paying attention. And most people don't pay attention, which is why they were so caught off guard by it. Really, I was... The Last of Us Part 2 was really everything I was expecting it to be. Well, to be fair, it was probably a lot worse than I was expecting it to be. Like, I did not expect the whole Abby thing. Like, even I did not foresee that situation. That bodybuilder, that man face, getting ran from behind. Like, that's just... it's just... Holy shit, that's just the worst. That was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, the least sexy sex scene I think I've ever seen in my life. Like... ridiculous. I'm just so ridiculous. So what am I what's going to happen next? Well, ideally people need to stop supporting Naughty Dog. Like, people need to stop supporting these big exclusive PlayStation games in general. Horizon Zero Dawn, while not quite as bad as this, was going down that direction. It had the same sort of like feel to it, and I expect the sequel might actually be worse in that respect. Well, we'll have to see. It might be more of the same. It might be extremely worse. We'll have to see. I haven't heard of any like changes in staff at Guerrilla Games, so I'm not sure if it's going to become super woke. But it was already pretty woke to begin with. Like Horizon really was like the predecessor to this in that regard. Oof. Like, you can't trust Sony, man. Like, you can't trust these people. You have to you have to be honest with yourself here. You have to be upfront, and like, you have to like just take a stand, man. Like, don't support Naughty Dog. Don't support PlayStation. Don't buy a PS5. Don't buy these PlayStation IPs. Just buy a Switch, buy some Animal Crossing, and stick with that. Your life will be so much better when you do.